If you had told me a couple months ago there would be a video game that combined Crypt of the NecroDancer with Guitar Hero, alongside elements of Rhythm Heaven and Punch-Out!, I would have probably said, "Are you feeling alright, man?" But lo and behold, that insanity of a sentence actually exists in the form of the recently released Rift of the NecroDancer. I have been playing this game a ton since its release last month and have been somewhat disheartened by the lack of attention it seems to be getting. So in today's video, I wanted to put a spotlight on it and tell you all about why it's one of my favorite games of the year so far. Rift of the NecroDancer is a spin-off of the all-time great indie game Crypt of the NecroDancer. For the uninitiated, Crypt of the NecroDancer is a roguelike dungeon crawler released all the way back in 2015. What made Crypt of the NecroDancer so notable and unique was its inclusion of rhythm. The game introduced an innovative gameplay style where everything in the world moved to the beat, and that included the player themselves. Your character will only move or attack if your input is on beat. It added a whole new level of difficulty and precision to what would have been an otherwise basic gameplay loop. Crypt of the NecroDancer was a smash hit, often considered one of the best indie games of all time. 6 years later, Brace Yourself Games is back with a new spin-off that leans even further into the rhythm gameplay while still maintaining all of the elements you expect from a NecroDancer game. The easiest way to explain Rift of the NecroDancer is to compare it to Guitar Hero. You will immediately recognize the highway where the notes come down towards you. The biggest difference though is that unlike Guitar Hero, each note means something different here. For example, there are 3 different color slimes. A green slime requires just 1 hit, but a blue slime takes 2 hits, jumping back up the highway after the first hit and coming back down on the next note. Then there is a yellow slime which acts in the same way but must be hit 3 times. These enemy types get progressively crazier as the game goes on, with enemies that skip notes or move from left to right as you hit them. To put it simply, imagine playing a Guitar Hero game where each of the 5 colors meant something different that you had to remember. This concept alone was enough to get me interested. I love rhythm games and I'm always looking for anything that can scratch the itch of a modern Guitar Hero game. And I am so happy to say Rift of the NecroDancer not only lived up to my expectations, but it truly exceeded them in every possible way. When Rift of the NecroDancer launched for $20, I expected a fun rhythm game where I would play through all the songs a few times and then move on. But what I got was so much more. The game comes jam-packed with so much content and things to do, it almost makes me feel like the $20 I spent on it was unfair to the developers. We'll start with the standard track list where you can play and replay all of the songs, going for the highest scores. This is basically the only thing I expected the game to be, and honestly, just that alone would have met my expectations because the core gameplay is so fun and unique. I feel confident saying you have never played a rhythm game quite like this before. The combination of not only having to be on beat, but also remembering what each enemy type does and how they will react to your hit leads to an entrancing experience. The game is hypnotizing as you feel your entire brain power getting tested. It helps that the songs are unsurprisingly great alongside a colorful art style that pops off the screen. With 32 songs, each of them having 4 different difficulties, a ranking system, and an added challenge of going for a full combo, you could spend countless hours just playing this mode alone. But you don't have to do just that because there is plenty more to discover. Rift of the NecroDancer also features a story mode that gives some context to what is happening in the game. Cadence and her friends have been mysteriously transported to a new world. This world, resembling New York City, is experiencing rifts opening up. In these rifts, enemies from Cadence's world are rushing through, and the only way to close them is to fight through the song. Cadence and her friends must fight off all of the rifts and find a way back home. This story is told through cute cutscenes and dialogue sequences that lead into the next song. The biggest bonus from story mode are the 2 different kinds of mini games you'll find, and this was the moment I went from enjoying the game to being absolutely in love with the game. Rift of the NecroDancer features mini-games that are an obvious homage to Rhythm Heaven, featuring the follow the leader and listen for clues formula you'll recognize from that franchise. I don't think I've ever talked about it on my channel before, but I absolutely love Rhythm Heaven to a somewhat odd degree. I remember being obsessed with it as a kid, replaying levels over and over again, addicted to the music. Unfortunately, Nintendo doesn't seem to love it as much as I do, with the franchise coming up on a decade of dormancy this year. I've been desperate for something to fill the Rhythm Heaven hole in my heart for years, and this game finally gave me that. If you showed me some of these minigames without context, I would have genuinely thought it was footage of a new Rhythm Heaven game, and that is a huge compliment. My only complaint here is that I just wish there were more of them. The other non-traditional levels you'll find in the story mode are boss fights. In another nod to Nintendo, these boss fights are a rhythmic take on Punch-Out, with the combat loop of dodging left or right and then pressing up to attack. These boss fights were probably the only thing in the game that I didn't love. On medium difficulty, the fight has these arrows that show you when to dodge and attack. You will still need to be on beat, but that's pretty easy to do when there's essentially a countdown prompt. You can bump the difficulty up, which causes the on-screen prompts to go away. Now you must read what direction the attack is coming from on your own. But I personally found the visual and musical cues were not obvious enough, leading it to feel frustratingly difficult. We'll talk about the game's overall difficulty a little bit later, but I'll quickly say that for the most part I found it fair, with enough options to give you the personal experience you're looking for. The only time I didn't find that though was with these boss fights, where they either felt too easy or too hard, without that necessary middle ground. If the story mode and song replays aren't enough for you, there is even more content to be found, starting with 32 challenges. Each challenge includes an added rule set such as having only 1 HP, all of the monsters being question marks, or requiring all perfects to clear the song. There is also a remix mode, which switches up the enemies in each song, allowing for another new style of play. Finally, there is an ever-rotating daily challenge with different song variations to face each day. If somehow this is still not enough content to justify your $20 purchase, then good news, there is also a custom music mode where you can create your own tracks to play. This includes Steam Workshop support, where you can download songs made by others, making the game's content truly endless. Messing around with all the songs people have made on the Steam Workshop has been incredibly fun. As you can imagine, some are absolute spawns from hell, but there are also some genuinely very well made and fun levels. Between all of the different game modes and the custom music, there is legitimately hundreds of hours worth of content here if you want to master it all. Speaking of mastering everything, let's talk more about the difficulty, as I do think it will be the primary barrier to a wider audience enjoying the game. I don't consider myself to be amazing at rhythm games by any means, but I have played a lot of them throughout my life, so I've developed a decent understanding of the genre, and I feel confident saying Rift of the NecroDancer is one of the hardest I've ever seen or played. Imagine playing the hardest song you've ever been able to complete on Guitar Hero. Picture that sea of notes flying towards you as you desperately try to keep up. But now imagine each note means something different that you also have to process in split seconds. It's as intense as it sounds. For the most hardcore rhythm game fans, you'll be licking your chops at that statement. But I know there are a lot of people who struggle with rhythm games, and if that describes you, Rift of the NecroDancer might simply be too difficult. I think anyone could manage easy or normal mode with some practice. Hard mode might prove troublesome, but for someone like me, I'm able to get through it. As for impossible mode, it feels fittingly impossible. I cannot get more than 30 seconds into one of these songs on impossible mode without failing. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, especially because I know there are some rhythm game maniacs out there who will be able to play these harder difficulties no problem, but I think it's worth noting for those who may be on the fence. If you struggle with rhythm games, you will still be able to enjoy the songs on lower difficulties, but you will be locked out of a lot of content in the game, which makes it harder for me to recommend. Rift of the NecroDancer seems to be a game that will continually evolve, as the developers have already added 3 new songs to the mix in the form of a Super Meat Boy crossover, and have teased more indie music will be coming in the future. With these updates and the Steam Workshop creations, this is a game that is basically just getting started, and I'm very excited to see where it goes next. I hope you enjoyed this quick little review of Rift of the NecroDancer. I've never made a video quite like this before, so I'm not sure how it will do, but if even one of you saw the game from this video and ended up enjoying it as much as I did, I'd say it was worth it. Also, I don't know if this has to be said, but this is not an ad, I'm just a big fan of the game. Anyways, if you did enjoy, please like and subscribe, it helps out the channel a ton, and let me know if you would like to see more indie spotlight style videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching.